Coming up on Network Africa, Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga calls off planned protests as several die or hospitalized after clashes. Sudan's Rapid Support Forces paramilitary group denies involvement in West Darfur's violence. And court cancels candidacy of Mugabe ally in Zimbabwe elections. Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. 53 children have been rushed to a hospital in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, after falling unconscious when tear gas was thrown into their class by police during protests. Eagle Nursing Home Hospital owner Dr. Aaron Shikuku says the children have been stabilized after being at the hospital for about 4 hours. 2 people are reported to have died as protesters stormed a police station and torched it. And another man died after a police van was attacked along the Nairobi Expressway in Longongo on the outskirts of the city. Transport and businesses have been disrupted around the country after protesters resorted to lighting fires on roads. Meanwhile, striking public transport workers engaged in activities like football games at the bus terminuses.
The government have got many empty promises. Like now, the matatu fares are up, fuel costs are up, food cost is very high. We can't afford even to get a single meal. We go on maybe on water per day. These are very fake government. And we are praying for Baba to be hard, to press it hard until something happens. We need low costs. We are living in hard times. Kenya is in a poor state. It shall reach a time when even to educate our children shall be a problem.
And Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga has called off a rally that had been planned at Kamukunji grounds in Nairobi, saying that he wanted to avert further violence. At least one person has been killed during a day of protests across the country against tax increases. Police have used tear gas in numerous towns and cities, including Mombasa and the capital. Mr. Odinga has again demanded that the government scrap tax rises, and he has condemned the police, accusing them of multiple shootings, assaults and harassing his supporters. We're joined by Kenyan journalist Brian Wender, who speaks to us virtually from Nairobi. Hello, Brian.
Hello from Nairobi.
Right, so good to see you today. Opposition figure Raila Odinga has called off planned protests because of violence. Is he showing any sort of remorse for the violent turn things have taken?
I'm afraid no, not yet, because news that just came in a few minutes ago say that the Azimio Brigade will continue doing demonstrations, another set of wave from next Wednesday. And so, well, the demonstrations are still on.
Give us an update on the children that were hurt. It appears not all of them were taken to the Eagle Nursing Home, and 53 is a really large number to fit into any one facility. What are you hearing about the other children?
Basically, let me say that the children who have been reported, the 53 of them, 47 being girls and 6 being boys, were taken to the hospital, where they were stabilized and all are back at home. And today they should be back to their learning institutions. And basically the situation was not that serious because what happened is when tear gas was lobbed in some of these learning institutions where protesters again were also in those schools, these children were affected because of the tear gas. One of the experiences that you're going to also have once you're in Kenya here in Nairobi CBD is in the evenings of this protest, you can also feel, long after these protests are done, you can smell, the tear gas is still very much active. And now you can imagine all that happening to children But right now, they're in stable conditions and they are well back to their schools, yes.
And there also seems to be, conflicting reports about the number of casualties, with some sources saying up to 6 people died. How close is this, to the reality, or is it a cumulative figure?
This is a cumulative figure because, according to the latest information that has been confirmed by the authorities, at least 9 have lost their lives. Different humanitarian or human rights groups say 12. Yesterday, by the end of the day, the authorities were counting a number of up to 6 of them. But the confirmed number right now is 9, for at least from Mlolongo, where there was massive looting and there was vandalization of the expressway, 2 in Kitengela and 1 in Emali. One specific protester was also shot dead as they tried to destroy the national flag in an assistant county commissioner's office. And this is how the numbers look right now. 9 is the number that is confirmed as so far.
And what's the atmosphere like in Kenya as we speak? Is it safe? Are people conducting business as usual now that the protests have calmed down?
It is interesting, yes, because in the streets of Nairobi CBD, business is back to normal. Everyone is back to work. I am also from work right now, and everyone is basically minding their business. However, it's very important to notice of the political temperatures that are rising. Now, today is the day that I would say is when the government is having its field day, and more so condemning the protest, the unlawful protest. And by unlawful, they mean that the protest that led to looting. And they say something very worth noting, and actually we should be all eyes for next Wednesday, because they say, well, for the organizers of this protest, we're going to pay you a courtesy visit. And definitely, that's not a courtesy visit, remembering what happened a few months ago in Northlands, where the former president has his property, and Azimio leader Raila Odinga also was attacked, and farm was also attacked in industrial area. And they said they're going to pay a courtesy visit for destroying this property. And from experience being in Kenya, it's not as courteous. It's not much of courtesy.
Right, and because of this protests being suspended, have you heard anything about a possible strategy change or, tool of change being planned by Mr. Odinga?
Just like I hinted before, is that the protests are back. They're still on because one of the leaders of the group just released a statement saying that next Wednesday they're back. And the small bit of cancellation that happened yesterday was a rally that was meant to happen during and after the protest at Kamukunji grounds. And this happened after there was intel that was received by the Azimio Brigade. There might have been an intention to disrupt the rally, but they say that this coming Wednesday of next week is going to be a fresh round of protest also.
Right. Brian, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much.
Let's move on now. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, is urging Ghana to stop the expulsion of refugees from Burkina Faso. It said it's concerned by reports that hundreds of Burkinabe citizens, mainly women and children, have been deported from Ghana after fleeing there to escape violence in their homeland. The UNHCR adds that it's ready to provide more support to Ghana to address the needs of refugees. More than 2 million people in Burkina Faso have been forced from their homes by an Islamist insurgency that has spread across several countries in Africa's Sahel region. Now to our coverage of the crisis in Sudan, the Rapid Support Forces and allied militias are denying any role in recent violence in West Darfur, slamming allegations by Human Rights Watch HWR that they waged a massacre. According to HWR, 28 members of the Masalit tribe were killed and dozens of civilians were injured by the RSF and allies, who then destroyed the town of Mysteria in May. But Mustafa Ibrahim, who is an advisor to the RSF top brass, says that the clashes there were part of an ongoing civil war between local tribes and the Masalit tribes, which is, in his words, old and renewed. Rights groups have documented numerous abuses in the region, where Arab militias have been targeting non-Arabs. People in El Janina and surrounding areas have suffered some of the worst violence since this conflict began. Mr. Ibrahim says the RSF had no base in Mystery and accuses HRW of relying on biased sources and having no presence on the ground. The United Nations World Food Programme is rapidly scaling up its response on the Chad-Sudan border to support a surge of people fleeing from Sudan. Thousands of people are crossing each day from Sudan's Darfur region into the small border town of Adre in Chad, with many arriving injured and with harrowing stories of the violence they have escaped. The WFP says has so far delivered food and nutrition assistance to nearly 152,000 new arrivals and the host communities on the Chad-Sudan border.
We estimate now, UNHCR and the government, that some 100,000 have already crossed in Adre city. They are being relocated. Today we are here doing a food distribution where we will give them a minimum ration for 1 month to assist. They are mainly women and children, as you can see. They really need shelters. They're coming with nothing. And look at the weather today. It's a sun mixed with rain. It's very terrible. They're coming with nothing. And we cannot leave the government of Chad responding alone to that response. It's massive. So we really need to help. And those people really, really need our help.
Away from the Sudan crisis, former Zimbabwe government minister Xavier Kasukwere, who sought to challenge President Emerson Mnangagwa in elections coming up in August, has been barred from contesting. In a Harare High Court judge has invalidated Mr. Kasukwere's application to contest as an independent candidate mere weeks after the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission accepted his registration papers. Lawyer Lovedale Mangwana challenged the body's decision in court, arguing that Mr. Kasukwere was no longer a registered voter as he had lived outside Zimbabwe for longer than 18 months. Mr. Kasukwere is a Mugabe loyalist and served as a ZANU-PF political commissar and Minister of Youth and Indigenization in the ex-president's government. He fled the country in the aftermath of the military coup that ushered President Emerson Mnangagwa to power, returned briefly in 2018, but fled again to South Africa, citing political persecution. And still to come after the break. South Africa named the world's best holiday country. Details in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Prosecutors in the Canary Islands have filed a lawsuit alleging that negligence by the Spanish authorities may have led to the deaths of 36 migrants who tried to reach the territory in an inflatable boat last month. The vessel sank after waiting 10 hours for help. However, a Moroccan boat picked up 24 survivors. Spain's Coastal Rescue Service has defended itself against accusations of negligence after it was reported that one of its boats was just 1 hour away from the migrant vessel. Elsewhere now, President Yoweri Museveni gave Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi the red carpet welcome when he arrived in Uganda as he continued a three-country tour of Africa that Tehran has touted as a new beginning in relations with the continent. His trip to Africa, which has seen him visit Kenya already and will also take him to Zimbabwe is the first by an Iranian president in more than a decade and represents a bid to diversify Iran's trade relations in the face of crippling U.S. sanctions. Mr. Raisi signed 4 agreements with President Yoweri Museveni and said Iran stands ready to share its experience regarding a planned 60,000 barrel per day oil refinery. VOA correspondent Halima Atumani joins me now from Uganda for more. Hi, Halima. It's been more than 10 years now, yes, since Africa got a visit from any Iranian authority figure. Does this come as a surprise, and what's the significance of this visit?
Well, it doesn't really come as a surprise. To use someone's words, they said Africa is a continent of opportunities. I think Iran has seen it, having faced, the sanctions from the US that has crippled its economy. Iran is now trying to galvanize, its political, trade, and economic relations with many countries. And I think coming to Africa is just one of those ways. And the statements, if you hear, that are coming from President Raisi's words, or the words he's using in his statements, for example, he wants to relate, with Africa. And I think for Uganda, the first thing that he did was, talk about the gay law that was passed in May this year, and say, how the West is trying to use that to bring a dirty thing, he call it a dirty thing, the dirtiest thing in history, and forcing it upon Africans. But of course, Iran has experience in oil exploration. Uganda is struggling with its, 163,000 kilometer pipeline. They're supposed to connect it to Tanzania from the oil refinery in southwestern Uganda. Uganda as a nation is struggling to get finances, and Iran coming in a way, because that's one of the things that President Museveni put on the table when he was speaking to President Raisi, and he was telling him, he called them the colonial agents. He said colonial agents are telling him he cannot do certain things. He cannot build a refinery. And President Raisi told him, we have experience. We shall share with you this experience in construction of a refinery, so you can count on us. So in other words, he's trying to galvanize these relations. I think to a certain point, you would say Iran was quite isolated because of the sanctions. But now they're spreading out their wings and trying to show Africa that we are here for you. So not just look at China, not just look at Russia or the West for support. You should come to us too.
From the investments prospects that you just spoke about, tell us more about the business agreements that were reached between President Raisi and Mr. Museveni.
Well, Uganda has a hospital. We should start because they discuss things to do with health and how they're supposed to improve our health system. Of course, Uganda as a country, we are doing badly. So we have what we call the Iran-Uganda hospital, which is also not a very good standard. So they're looking at revamping and just improving the standards there. The two presidents also talked about they did sign memorandums of understanding. For example, people who, they sign a memorandum of understanding on visa waivers for holders of diplomatic and service passports, memorandum of understanding on agricultural cooperation, MOUs of a joint commission for cooperation. So you see that, that Iran is really trying to open up and show Africa that if you need anything in terms of business, in terms of agriculture, many African countries pride themselves, in focusing on agriculture. Uganda being one of them, even though, the budgeting at the end of the day, sometimes agriculture has the least allocations. So Iran is really standing up and saying, we are here for you. You can count on us if you need any technical advice. We talked about the oil, the pipeline. And this is something that, Uganda is really looking forward to, having a partner who will not think twice. Because just recently we had the US, is pulling out of one of the contracts to support, the production of oil here. So it's Iran is really looking out and spread, and I think in a way it's not giving Africa a blank check, no, but at least they're telling them if you have issues in regards to education, in regards to telecommunication or information, you can come to Iran.
Right, Halima, thank you for expanding that conversation, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's move on now. Readers surveyed by the UK's Telegraph newspaper say South Africa is the world's best tourist destination. The right-wing paper gushes over the beauty of Cape Town, calling it a supermodel of at the foot of Table Mountain. It also hails the fine wine vintages of South Africa's wine country and calls the garden route a ribbon of road trip nirvana. Kenya and Botswana also rank in the Telegraph's top 10 at number 7 and number 10, respectively. And former Mozambican Finance Minister Manuel Chang has been handed over to the FBI to face fraud and corruption charges in the United States. Mr. Chang, who has been in prison in South Africa since December 2018, denies any wrongdoing. The spokesman for South Africa's Justice and Correctional Services Ministry, Chespin Phiri, confirms that Mr. Chang was handed over earlier this week. Mr. Chang was in charge of Mozambique's finances when the country guaranteed more than $2 billion in secret borrowing by state-owned firms. It was the country's biggest corruption scandal and led to economic collapse. It's alleged that the money was used to buy a large tuna factory, among other things, leading to the affair being dubbed the tuna bond scandal. So far, 11 people, including the son of former Mozambican President Armando Guebuza, have been convicted after their roles in the scheme. And Google has announced the expansion of Bard, its conversational AI service, to 40 new languages and 59 countries and territories. The expansion includes new features that allows users to better customize their experience, boost their creativity, and make the Bard experience more interactive and user-friendly. As a result, Swahili has been added to the AI chatbot, making it the first African language to be included. Bard is now available in most of the world, across the world, and in the most widely spoken languages such as Chinese, German, Spanish, Arabic, and Hindi. Users can now access Bard in their preferred language with text-to-speech, also enabled in 8 languages. Dorothy Oko, head of communications and public affairs, Google, says in her words that we're excited that this is Bard's largest expansion to date. We see its global availability as a great democratizer of knowledge. That's why we created Bard, to help you explore that curiosity, augment your imagination, and ultimately get your ideas off the ground, not just by answering your questions, but by helping you build on them. And the government of Seychelles has responded to the issue of a visa ban on Nigerian passport holders. In an article posted on the government news agency website, the Vice President Ahmed Afif explained that Nigerians with diplomatic passports, valid work or resident permits issued by the island nation will be allowed to enter. He says for others, the government will keep its eyes open, and the Seychelles electronic border system will analyze much more to find out what reasons they are coming for. Example is someone who is coming for a holiday for only one day. We have to ask questions because it's strange, and we have seen that happening. He says there were many instances where many Nigerians said that they were coming for holidays, but only for 1 or 2 days, and that's in the past year. Especially in the past few months, the government has observed a tendency deemed dangerous for the border control and economy due to criminal activities happening in the country. According to him, in the past 2 weeks, 13 people coming from Nigeria have been arrested when entering Seychelles because they were carrying drugs into the country. He also highlighted the issue of some Nigerians using false credit cards as tourist establishments. There had been outcry earlier in the week about Nigerian passport holders being banned from receiving visas from the government of Seychelles for holiday purposes. Vice President Afif said it arose due to the lack of communication on the matter. Meanwhile, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Tourism of Seychelles, Sylvestre Radgonde, is set to meet with the Nigerian ambassador for Seychelles to discuss the matter further. And that's the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.